At our 20th anniversary dinner, I overheard my husband tell his brother, "I've moved her inheritance. After the house sells, I'll divorce her and take the kids." We'd renewed vows that morning. I ordered champagne, silent. Today, he screamed. Outside my house, but I'd left. His betrayal freed me. My revenge is his emptiness. He thought he'd fool me, but I'm smarter. You know those moments when your whole world just flips upside down? Like when you're just chilling, thinking everything's cool, and then bam, reality hits you like a freight train? That's exactly what happened to me 3 months ago, and let me tell you, it's been one wild ride ever since. So picture this, it's our 20th wedding anniversary, right? 20 freaking years of marriage, 2 kids, a house in the suburbs with a white picket fence and everything. That morning, we actually renewed our vows at this cute little chapel downtown. I'm talking the whole 9 yards, new dress, flowers, even hired a photographer because our kids wanted to be there. My husband was all smiles, holding my hands, looking into my eyes like he meant every single word. "For better or worse, in sickness and health," he said, voice all shaky with emotion. I was literally crying happy tears, thinking about how lucky we were to make it this far when so many couples don't. After the ceremony, we dropped the kids off at my sister's place and headed to this fancy steakhouse across town, the kind of place where they have cloth napkins and the waiters wear bow ties. You know, the whole anniversary dinner vibe. We ordered a bottle of wine, started reminiscing about our early days when we could barely afford McDonald's, laughing about how far we'd come. Everything was perfect. Too perfect, as it turns out. About halfway through dinner, my husband excused himself to take a phone call, said it was work stuff that couldn't wait. I didn't think much of it. His job in construction always had him dealing with emergencies and deadline issues. But when he didn't come back after like 15 minutes, I started getting a little worried. The restaurant wasn't that big, so I figured I'd just check on him real quick. That's when I found him outside on the patio, talking to his brother Mike. They were standing by these big planters, kind of tucked away from the main dining area. I was about to call out to them when I caught the tail end of their conversation, and honestly, I wish I never had. "The paperwork's all set," my husband was saying, voice low but clear as day. "I've moved her inheritance into the joint account, then transferred it to the business account. She has no idea." My feet literally froze to the ground. My inheritance. The money my grandmother left me when she passed 2 years ago. It wasn't a fortune or anything, but it was substantial enough to secure our kids' college funds and maybe help us retire a little earlier. Money that was supposed to be mine, that I'd been so careful about keeping separate because Grandma always told me to make sure I had something of my own. Mike was shaking his head, looking uncomfortable. "Man, I don't know about this. 20 years of marriage and you're really gonna do this? After the house sells next month, I'll file for divorce," my husband continued, completely ignoring his brother's concerns. "With the inheritance already moved and my name on everything, she'll get minimal alimony. I'll push for primary custody of the kids. Her work schedule is crazy enough that any judge will see I'm the more stable parent." I had to grab onto the planter to keep from falling over. This man, the father of my children, the person I'd just renewed vows with that very morning, was planning to destroy our entire life together, and he'd been setting it up for months, maybe even years. "What about the vows you just renewed like 6 hours ago?" Mike asked, and I could hear the disgust in his voice. My husband actually laughed. "Those were just words, Mike. I needed her to think everything was fine until I could get everything in place. Besides, Sarah's been getting too comfortable lately, always talking about taking that art class, maybe going back to work part-time now that the kids are older. She needs to remember that I'm the one who built this life." Update. Holy cow, you guys. The support in the comments is incredible. I'm literally sitting in my new apartment right now, reading all your messages, and I can't stop crying happy tears. Someone asked if I confronted him that night. Nope, I played it way smarter than that. But here's the thing that's really eating at me. Should I tell the kids the truth about why their dad is suddenly acting so different, or try to protect them from this mess? I somehow managed to walk back to our table without my legs giving out completely. When he came back inside a few minutes later, all smiles and apologies about the work emergency, I just nodded and smiled back. Ordered another glass of wine, even raised a toast to 20 more years together. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I knew I had to play it cool until I could figure out my next move. The rest of dinner was torture. He kept reaching across the table to hold my hand, talking about our future plans, how maybe we should take that trip to Italy we'd always talked about. Every word was like a dagger, knowing that he was planning to abandon our family while pretending to care about our dreams together. When we got home that night, I tucked the kids into bed like normal, kissed them goodnight, helped with homework. But inside, my mind was racing. I kept thinking about all the little things that suddenly made sense. Why he'd been so insistent about refinancing the house, why he'd suggested we put my inheritance into the joint account for better interest rates, why he'd been working late so many nights recently. That weekend, while he was at his usual golf game with the guys, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through his computer, found emails with lawyers, real estate agents, even a financial advisor I'd never heard of. There were documents about asset protection, custody arrangements, and a whole timeline for what he called the transition. The man had been planning this for over a year. A whole year of lying to my face, sleeping next to me, playing happy family while secretly dismantling everything we'd built together. But here's the thing about underestimating your wife of 20 years. I might have been blindsided, but I wasn't helpless. See, while he was busy playing games with lawyers and moving money around, he forgot that I wasn't just some stay-at-home wife without a brain. I'd been managing our household finances for 2 decades, had connections of my own, and most importantly, I knew exactly how he thought. First thing Monday morning, I called my own lawyer. Turns out, moving someone's inheritance without their explicit written consent is illegal, even if you're married, especially when there's evidence of premeditation and intent to defraud. My lawyer was practically salivating when I showed him the emails I'd photographed. Next, I called the bank. Funny thing about that joint account, it required both signatures for any transfers over $10,000. The bank manager was very interested to learn that my signature on several recent documents looked suspiciously different from my usual handwriting. They froze the account pending an investigation. Then I did something that probably saved my life. I started documenting everything. Every conversation, every strange behavior, every time he mentioned the house sale or made comments about our future. I even started recording our dinner conversations on my phone, just in case. Update. You guys are asking great questions. Yes, I got screenshots of everything before he could delete it. And yes, I definitely moved my important documents to a safe place. Learned that trick from my divorce attorney sister years ago. Never thought I'd need it. But here's what's really wild. I just found out he's been telling people at work that I'm having a breakdown and might need professional help. Anyone else dealt with this kind of manipulation during their divorce? The house sale was supposed to happen in 3 weeks. He'd been pushing hard for us to accept the first offer, even though it was below asking price. Said we needed to move quickly because of market conditions. Now I understood why. He wanted that money liquid and accessible before he made his move. So I threw him a curveball he never saw coming. The night before the scheduled closing, I told him I'd changed my mind about selling. Said I'd been thinking about it all week and realized I wasn't ready to leave the house where we'd raised our babies. He tried to argue, said we'd already committed, but I held firm. Legal contracts require both spouses to sign, and I simply refused. He was furious but trying to hide it, saying things like, "Sweetheart, we talked about this, and you're being emotional." But I could see the panic in his eyes. His whole timeline was falling apart. That's when he made his biggest mistake. He tried to force my hand by telling me he'd already made other arrangements, that we had to sell because he'd committed to some business deal that required the house money. When I asked for details, he got defensive, then angry, then started talking about how I never supported his ambitions and always held him back. It was like watching a mask slip off. This man who'd been playing loving husband for months was suddenly showing his true colors, and it was ugly. I let him rant for a while, then calmly told him I needed some time to think. Went upstairs, packed a bag for me and the kids, and called my sister. Told her we were coming for an extended visit and that I'd explain everything when we got there. The kids were confused but excited about a surprise sleepover with their cousins. They had no idea their world was about to change forever. When I came back downstairs with our bags, he was on the phone again, this time clearly panicked. He saw me and quickly hung up. "Where are you going?" he demanded. "Somewhere I can think clearly," I replied. "The kids and I need some space while I decide what I want to do about the house." He started to argue, but I was already heading for the door. "I'll call you in a few days," I said over my shoulder. That was 6 weeks ago. I haven't been back to that house since. The first few days at my sister's were rough. I had to tell the kids that Daddy and I were having some problems and needed some time apart. They asked a million questions I couldn't answer without destroying their image of their father. How do you tell a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old that their dad is a lying, manipulative fraud who was planning to abandon them? My sister, bless her heart, helped me find a good family therapist who specializes in divorce situations. She's been working with the kids to help them process everything without getting into the ugly details. They know their parents are getting divorced, and they understand it's not their fault, but they don't need to know about the financial betrayal and the calculated deception. Meanwhile, I've been working with my lawyer to untangle the financial mess. Turns out my husband made several critical errors in his grand plan. First, the signature forgery was sloppy and easily provable. Second, he'd been bragging to his golf buddies about his exit strategy, and one of them, a guy whose wife is friends with my sister, had been feeling guilty about staying quiet. He came forward with details about conversations going back months, but the biggest mistake my husband made was underestimating my network. 20 years of being a soccer mom, PTA volunteer, and community member means I know a lot of people, including the wife of the real estate agent he'd been working with, who happened to mention at book club that her husband was helping this poor man, whose wife was supposedly having mental health issues and needed to sell their house quickly. Everything started unraveling for him fast. Update. Okay, this is the big one, guys. Court date is set, and my lawyer says we have enough evidence to not only get my inheritance back, but also prove fraud and emotional abuse. My husband showed up at my sister's house yesterday, and what he said to me made everything crystal clear about who he really is. Also, the kids have something to tell him, and I think it's going to surprise everyone. Should I let them speak for themselves, or should I handle this alone? 3 weeks ago, he started calling constantly. First, it was apologies and promises to go to counseling. Then it turned into accusations. I was being vindictive, keeping the kids from him, ruining his reputation. When I didn't respond to any of that, he started showing up places. At my work, at the kids' school, even at the grocery store. Last week, he made a critical error. He came to my sister's house while she was at work and the kids were at school. I was there alone, getting some work done on my laptop, when I heard his truck pull into the driveway. He looked terrible, unshaven, clothes wrinkled, eyes red like he hadn't been sleeping. For a split second, I actually felt sorry for him. 20 years of marriage don't just disappear overnight, even when you know the person betrayed you. "We need to talk," he said when I opened the door. "We can talk through our lawyers," I replied, starting to close the door. He put his hand against it, not violently, but firmly. "Please, just 5 minutes. I need to explain." Against my better judgment, I let him in. We sat in my sister's living room, this awkward space between us that felt like a canyon. "I made mistakes," he started, and for a moment I thought maybe he was going to come clean, apologize, try to make things right. But then he kept talking. "I was trying to protect our family's future. You don't understand business like I do. That money was just sitting there doing nothing, and I saw an opportunity to invest it, grow it into something bigger for all of us." I stared at him. "You were planning to divorce me and take the kids." He had the nerve to look confused. "Who told you that?" "I heard you. That night at dinner talking to Mike." His face went white, then red, then he started getting angry. "You were spying on me? Eavesdropping on private conversations? Private conversations about stealing my inheritance and abandoning your family?" That's when the real him came out. Not the charming husband, not the concerned father, but the manipulative man who'd been playing a long game for months. "That money should have been ours anyway," he said, voice getting louder. "Your grandmother barely knew you. I'm the one who took care of her when she was sick. I'm the one who drove her to doctor appointments when you were too busy with work. I earned that money more than you did." The audacity was breathtaking. "You took care of her because I was working 60-hour weeks to support our family while you were building your business. My business that supports this family. My business that paid for this house, for the kids' activities, for every vacation we've ever taken." We were shouting now, 20 years of resentment coming out in toxic waves. "Your business that you were going to use to hide my inheritance while you divorced me. Because you don't appreciate anything I've done. You take everything for granted, always wanting more, always pushing me to do better while you sit back and criticize." It was like listening to a stranger. This man who I'd loved, who I'd built a life with, who I'd stood beside through job losses and family deaths and all the normal struggles of a long marriage. He'd been harboring this resentment for years, maybe our entire relationship. "Get out," I said quietly. "This is my house too. This is my sister's house, and you're not welcome here." He stood up, and for a moment I was actually scared. Not that he'd hurt me physically, but the look in his eyes was so full of rage and entitlement that I didn't recognize him at all. "You're going to regret this," he said, heading for the door. "You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you're doing. You can't take care of yourself, you can't support those kids, and you're going to come crawling back." After he left, I sat in that living room for 2 hours just crying. Not for him, but for the life I thought we'd had, for the man I thought I'd married, for the future I'd believed we were building together. But then my kids came home from school, and everything shifted back into focus. My daughter hugged me and asked if I was okay. My son, who's usually too cool for affection, sat down next to me and just held my hand. "Mom," my daughter said, "we know Dad's been acting weird, and we know you guys are getting divorced, but we want you to know that we're okay. We love you both, but we're not stupid. We can see who's been taking care of us all these years." That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. Not just for me, but for them. Yesterday was the court date for the preliminary hearing. My husband showed up with his lawyer, still convinced he could charm his way out of this mess. But between the documented evidence, the witness testimony, and the bank records showing unauthorized transfers, the judge wasn't having it. The court ordered the immediate return of my inheritance, plus penalties for the unauthorized transfers. More importantly, they granted me temporary custody of the kids and exclusive use of our house pending the final divorce settlement. When we walked out of that courtroom, my husband was standing by his truck, looking defeated. But instead of remorse, I saw something else in his eyes: calculation. He was already planning his next move, figuring out how to spin this situation to his advantage. That's when I realized the truth that had been staring me in the face for months. I'd never really known him at all. The man I'd married, the father of my children, the partner I'd trusted with my heart and my future, he'd been a performance all along. But here's the thing about discovering your husband's true nature. It's terrifying and liberating at the same time. Terrifying because it means 20 years of your life were built on a lie. Liberating because once you see the truth, you can finally start making decisions based on reality instead of fantasy. I'm writing this from my own living room now, in the house where my children grew up, surrounded by photos and memories that I'm slowly learning to see differently. Some of them are still beautiful. The kids' first steps, family vacations, quiet Sunday mornings. But others now carry the weight of knowing what was really happening behind the scenes. My inheritance is back in my own account, in my name only. I've started that art class I always talked about. I'm working with a financial advisor to make sure my kids' college funds are protected. And most importantly, I'm teaching my children that love without respect is just manipulation wearing a prettier mask. My husband moved out last month. He's renting a small apartment across town and sees the kids every other weekend. They're adjusting better than I expected, probably because the tension in our house has finally lifted. We all sleep better now. He still calls sometimes, usually late at night when he's been drinking. Sometimes he's apologetic, sometimes he's angry, sometimes he tries to convince me that we can work things out. But I know now that the man I fell in love with 20 years ago was just a character he played when it served his purposes. The real man is the one who planned to steal from me, lie to our children, and destroy our family for his own benefit. That's not someone you build a life with, that's someone you escape from. So here I am, 43 years old, starting over with 2 teenagers and a clearer understanding of my own worth than I've ever had before. It's scary and exciting and overwhelming all at once, but for the first time in Years, maybe decades. I'm making decisions based on what I want, not what someone else expects from me. I'm learning to trust my own instincts again, to value my own opinions, to remember that I'm more than just a supporting character in someone else's story. My revenge isn't some elaborate scheme or public humiliation. It's simply this: I'm happy. I'm building a life based on truth instead of lies, surrounded by people who actually care about my well-being instead of just what I can provide for them. He thought he was so clever, planning his exit strategy while I remained oblivious. But the joke's on him. His betrayal didn't destroy me. It freed me, and that's the best revenge of all.